ICU to join us.
Hey.
Dr. Langdon! Tier 1 trauma, ETA, 6 minutes.
And so it begins.
Welcome to the Pitt podcast, the official companion to HBO Max's The Pitt. I'm Dr. Alok Patel, physician, journalist, public health aficionado.
And I'm Hunter Harris, a screenwriter and cultural critic. Each week, we'll take you inside the Pitt and talk about what's going on with the characters, the cases, the patients at the Pittsburgh Trauma Medical Center.
Today, we're talking about the very first episode of season 2. You've been waiting for this moment.
We're talking to none other than the man himself, Dr. Robby, or Noah Wyle.
You know, that the audience is privy to a clue that the characters around the character protagonist aren't aware of.
We also had the chance to talk to Dr. Joe Sachs, a writer and executive producer on The Pitt.
Also an emergency medicine physician. Real deal.
I love having two doctors talk in terms that no one in their right mind would understand unless they went to medical school. But the passion and the emotion and the conflict of it is palpable.
And if you missed it, definitely make sure to watch our pre-premiere episode where we talk about season 1 with executive producers R. Scott Gimel and John Wells.
And there's a tremendous amount of research that actually goes into determining what they want to talk about, rather than doing it kind of top down in the sense of what are the things that you want to see. A lot of it comes from talking to their two physicians who are in the room full time, who are writers on the show.
We have a lot to get into. The shift starts now.
You're back.
It took some time. Like an old trail horse, always found a way back out.
Hunter, come with it. What character or duo were you most excited to see in this return to the Pit in season 2?
It has been a long time without Charge Nurse Dana. I was ready to see her
That
again.
is your ride or die.
No, truly, I embraced her with open arms. I said, my sister, my Shayla. Also, I want to say Javadi and Dr. McKay. I feel like they have a very good partnership, chemistry. I loved that scene last season where Javadi was sort of third wheeling herself on the date between Dr. McKay and the nurse. And I like their their girl time friendship. It's good. What about you?
I like that. Listen, I think I don't want to say obvious answer, but I bet a lot of people watching this show are excited to see like Langdon get back.
Mm-hmm.
How's it going to be with Langdon and Robbie, Langdon and Dana? I'm going to try to be a little bit more original. I'm really excited to see Whitaker and Santos.
The roommates.
The roommates. That was the end of season 1. We did not say, I mean, are they going to be lovers now? Are they going to be enemies now? Like, I don't know.
I feel like it's hard working with someone who you also like go home to see. Like it's hard working with a roommate. So I think they'll be like, let's not talk at work. We can talk at home.
Yeah, I get it, but it's I'm just saying there's a really fun difference in energy between them. Whitaker, like the softer, comes from a farm.
Yeah.
Santos, she's got some demons, but she's an amazing doctor and advocate. She's fierce, and I think the two of them together are going to make for like an interesting setup.
I mean, how does it feel for you to be back in the Pit though? Because I am like, I've come home. Let me get my stethoscope out. I'm ready to like do some practice of medicine even. But also with Dr. Al-Hashimi coming, I'm a little bit like, I'm such a Dr. Robby like Pitt loyalist. I'm a Leo. What can I say? Where I'm like, hold on, not too much. Like you're coming into our Pit. You can't just come in here and start wanting to change things. I'm feeling a little bit observed. I don't know. It makes me a little bit uncomfortable. How do you feel?
I love the ownership you still have. You're coming into our Pit. I love it. Let me think about this for a second. In this episode, if I go directly to just nerdy doctor brain, what immediately captivated me is you have this new attending rolling in, Dr. Al-Hashimi. I'm excited to see how everyone has grown and matured over the past 10 months. You know, people are 1 year ahead in residency. Like, I'm curious to see how the dynamics change.
Yeah. Well, this was a great episode. Let's talk about what happened in episode 1.
New characters, new interns, new haircuts. Hunter, catch us up.
Okay, so Dr. Robby is going on sabbatical. We see him, and I want to talk about this because I know that this bumped you a lot. We see him riding into work on the motorcycle, no helmet.
I know.
Cuckoo bananas. But he's going on sabbatical. He's going on, what is it, like a 3-month thing? But I think there's a little bit of joking as to how long he'll actually be gone. And running the ER, or the ED, I should say, in his stead is Dr. Al-Hashimi, who is, I don't think she's like very like prickly, but she definitely has different ideas about how the ED should be run. And there's a bit of a tension between them where Dr. Robby feels both very observed and a little bit second guest. And she is like, let me in. I want to, if I'm supposed to take over for you, how am I supposed to do that without you kind of helping me and telling me what to do?
I just like that she comes in like napalm. And she's like, she's like, I worked on this project at the VA hospital.
Yeah.
We got patient passports. Here's how we're going to make things more efficient. Like, good for her. Stand up.
We'll see. I'm a loyalist. We'll see. Let's hear from her words. How she comes
fair.
in.
That's even better.
Hi, I know you're crazy busy,
Always.
but I figured we should really go over a few things before you're gone.
Sure. Where would you like to start?
Well, one little thing that I think would have a big impact with staff and patients alike is if we launched a campaign to eradicate referring to this wonderful department as the Pitt.
Really?
I know you think it's silly and petty.
No, I think it's just kind of endearing. Pretty damn accurate.
I would argue the opposite. I think subconsciously it affects those who work here. It also lowers expectations, which in turn lowers patient satisfaction scores.
You've been talking to Gloria.
Yes, and she agrees with me.
Don't doubt that for a moment.
Listen.
Listen, yeah, you can't rename the pit.
No, it's our pit. It's my pit. It's we share it all. I felt like she came in a little bit hot, but I also want to talk about the choreography of that scene where Dr. Al-Hashmi is like kind of right on top of Dr. Robby, and he feels very like, can you kind of like get away a little bit? I'm a big personal space person, so that really got under my skin.
That's by design. Got to be.
And no, bold for sure. I think I love big ideas, but I understand Dr. Robby being a little bit like, relax.
So what I think is interesting also is Langdon is back, and we are inevitably going to see his interaction with his colleagues, with the nurses, but I'm curious to see how it plays out when he revisits patients. And like, there is a pretty pivotal scene where he just comes to Louis and he just owns it. He owns what happened.
Yeah, and I was nervous because it's like, that takes a lot of wherewithal to come to someone and say, I apologize, and something that happened that you didn't even know about maybe.
Also, like, Louis the man. Anyway,
I love Louis.
Let's relive that moment. It was heartfelt.
There's something I need to tell you. Last time I saw you, about 10 months ago, I treated you and I took some of your medicine.
I'm not sure I follow.
I have an addiction to benzos, and I helped myself to some of the Librium I prescribed you for your withdrawal.
You stole my pills?
Yeah. Yes. I'm sorry. It was not only wrong and utterly unprofessional, but it was a betrayal of my Hippocratic oath, and it was a fucking crime. That's where I've been. Rehab and counseling.
Huh.
I'm sorry. I understand if you'd prefer a different doctor.
Hey, Doc. We have a situation.
Excuse me. What kind of situation?
Someone left a little baby in the restroom.
Langdon hit on so many checkboxes there, from owning it, explaining it, talked about the process he did to his recovery, then saying like it was a fucking crime.
Yeah.
Just like saying that phrase.
Maybe from my point of view, I'm so stuck on Louis not really like, what do you mean? Like, he seems so confused because he obviously trusts Langdon a lot, and it seems very discordant with everything he's seen from Langdon before, that he would be like lying to him in this way. But then we end the scene with a baby left in the ED, abandoned. I'm like, what could possibly, oh, this baby is so cute. What could possibly happen?
That was wild.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's anything that's going to pull him away from Louis in that moment, it had to be an abandoned baby.
A truly crying baby in a bathroom. But the other big piece of drama this episode is that Mel, our beloved Dr. King, is being named in a malpractice suit. When I heard that, I'm like, oh my God, call Aaron Brockovich. But are you like, that happens all the time?
The threat of lawsuits happens all the time.
Okay.
Like, whether it's from a third party, or, from a law firm that's like, hey, this patient did this, or patients themselves screaming in the ER and saying like, we're going to sue you. And then some states have laws that protect physicians differently than others. And the reality is I can't imagine a situation where Mel herself would be named in a lawsuit and it wouldn't be something that's also involving the rest of the pit. I don't know. But
she
I'm
certainly
on her side.
She has a lot of anxiety about it, a lot of emotion. Should we take a look at those?
Yeah, like I mean, I felt her emotion. It meant like, and anyone who's like, hey, I'm going to sue you, like you worry about I feel for Mel. Mel,
Yeah.
we got you.
What's up with you today, Mel? Langdon?
What makes you think there's something up with me?
You're moping around here all day like somebody gunned down your favorite K-pop band.
I don't really have a favorite K-pop band. It's not that I don't like the genre.
Hey,
it's
forget K-pop. What's going on with you? You usually ride in here on your unicorn tossing wildflowers.
Unicorn?
Never mind. Is everything okay with your sister?
Oh, yeah, she's great. It's just this...
Spill, girl.
Well, a couple of months ago, I got named in a malpractice lawsuit. And so today is the deposition.
That's it? Every emergency medicine doc gets sued sooner or later. Seriously, don't sweat it. I mean, you're still a resident. We're protected by the hospital. You could cut somebody's head off and get away with it. But, you know, like, don't.
Taylor Dearden's acting is phenomenal. I don't have a favorite K-pop band. It's so good.
It's actually like she's really thinking about it in real time. Like, do I? No, I don't think so, actually. I have to say, Santos is so clever. Melancholia, malpractice, all of those little nicknames. I'm like, okay, Santos has the quickest wit in the ED.
And like them intermixing in that situation. And you can tell that Santos cares because she's like, what's going on? But her way of showing care is hilarious.
Yeah. Okay. We've seen a return patient, Louis, who I loved from season 1.
Love Louis.
I mean, is it possible for a patient to like light up a room where you're like, I'm actually so happy to see you, but I wish you weren't here exactly? Like, how often are repeat patients like that a thing?
It definitely happens. You know, some places will use these offensive names for them, like repeat offender, frequent flyer.
Frequent flyer is funny.
Frequent flyer is funny. I like that one's like kind of cute.
Yeah.
And the question comes down to is why are they continuously coming back? And like Louis is acted so well, written so well, because yes, you have the situation in which he's continuously drinking, probably not following some type of lifestyle modification, but he's like such a joy in the ER that people are like, oh, hey, it's Louis back. And you have those patients for sure.
Yeah.
I think the question that people always wonder is, okay, is it because somebody has a social situation where they can't take care of their own health? Can they not afford their medications? Do they not have access to primary care? Like, why do you continuously come back? So when you have these quote unquote frequent flyers, you essentially are always looking to say, like, what can we do so that you can take care of yourself in whatever situation you're in? And again, second shout out to social workers, because they definitely help with making sure that resources are met. And then what you mentioned earlier, but are there some patients that just light up the room? Absolutely. There are some patients, and like, doctors will see the family and say like, hey, it's so good to see you, but like not in this scenario. Like, I wish I was seeing you like at the grocery store.
Yeah.
But that definitely happens.
Is there ever a moment though where you're like, okay, I've given you the same advice 4 times in a row. Like, you can't come back here already. At least I feel like if someone doesn't take my advice, I'm a little bit like annoyed about it. Do you ever feel that with a patient who's like a frequent flyer?
Oh, I think that, yes. I think that not only do I feel it, I think like many of my colleagues feel it.
Okay.
But this topic goes back to something that John Wells was telling us, in that as more people don't have access to primary care or can't afford basic preventative health services, like, where are they going? They're going to the emergency departments. And so I think like we're going to continuously possibly see more of this theme in season 2, is like when basic access to healthcare is shook a little bit, there unfortunately might be more Louis.
Yeah.
Maybe not as pleasant as him either.
I'm going to say, yeah, usually not as pleasant as him. He is uniquely jolly, I would say.
So Robbie and Langdon, I can see that Langdon's like trying to get back into kind of that casual conversation, and he's asking about the motorcycle trip, and Robbie still kind of has his guard up. Like, where do you think this relationship is going? He's like, you go to triage. Don't be around me right now. Like, where are we going with this?
I'll tell you where it came from. Middle school. That feels like bullying. I'm like, wait, no, let him sit with you at the cool kids table. Like, please, like, let him back in. I understand though that Dr. Robby feels a real sense of like being violated because he and Langdon were so close before. They did have that kind of boyish affection with each other. Very felt like brotherly love. And I mean, we can talk about like the last season where there's that amazing scene where Robby confronts Langdon, and you can see the personal hurt as well as the like professional hurt in his face and in his eyes. And I don't know. I mean, it's hard to watch Langdon try to get Robby's attention, try to get back in his good graces. But I truly feel like on a busy day, I don't know how much time Robbie's going to have to truly like come to terms with how he feels about Langdon. And I hope we get to see that, but I'm not sure that we will. What do you think?
I think there's something to be said about the last 10 months. Like Langdon went on this path for himself and went to rehab, presumably spent more time with his family, like got his stuff together. And like, what was Robbie doing in the past 10 months? Did he not give himself time to heal? Did the hurt of Langdon with Pitt Fest, did all this, come down on him and he has not moved past things? Because you would think that he'd also be like, hey, you took the time to get better and get over your addiction. And I took the time to like forgive you. We're friends again. There seems to be a discontinuity.
No, I think that's what happens after addiction, where it's like, someone who has done the work, is healing, starts from a place of here. But, Dr. Robby, obviously, he still feels like the open wound. And especially the fact that Langdon, was dismissed right before the MCI when Robby needed him the most. I feel like that has a lot to do with, I think, Dr. Robby's healing.
Well, if like he could have gone and done his process, and then if Dr. Robby's like, yo, I'm not ready, then Langdon needs to be like, I understand. I don't know. Like,
Some
I think
people need to take space. And I hope that Langdon is open to that and doesn't take it as just, the hurt of rejection.
He's still got great hair.
So last season wasn't a holiday. It was just like a regular day. But now we are on the 4th of July weekend, which I'm like, okay, I have every radar on. I'm so nervous. I don't know what's going to happen. I just hope that no one brings like a firework to this hospital, or there's nothing, like the dumb summer stuff that happens on the 4th of July weekend. How do you feel going into this weekend?
Oh, I am absolutely pessimistic. I
think you work holidays, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
And I worry that there's going to be some form of pyrotechnics, some form of firecracker, sparkler, something, and like limbs might get blown off, eyes might get damaged, burns may happen, fires may happen.
That's what I'm nervous about the most, the burns.
All of it. I mean, people wind up in ERs every single year during the 4th of July because people are messing around with fireworks. They're not taking the safety precautions, no matter how many warnings there are. When I was a resident, I saw a rising star basketball player blow off his right hand from a firework.
Oh my gosh.
And you see these happen, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And so this setup that it's 4th of July weekend, I'm with you. Where I'm already like, oh my gosh.
I almost have to wonder, why couldn't Dr. Robby just finesse the schedule a little bit and his last weekend was like the last weekend of July or of June or something like that, just to like get out a little bit. So I'm watching this as a person who like barely has a PCP, but I want to know from you, like, are you watching this and noticing specific details, specific moments that really stand out to you as a medical professional?
Oh, totally.
Okay.
And it makes it fun because it's almost like they insert these medical Easter eggs in the show that you're like, if you miss them completely, it doesn't change your experience.
Yeah.
But if you catch them, you're like, oh my gosh, that's a really subtle, funny little moment. Like, I'll give you one.
Okay.
So during the first scene with Dr. Al-Hashimi, when she has like the residents practicing like CPR on that mannequin, and then she comes in and she's like, hey, like it was the wrong rhythm. The rhythm that it showed is something that we just call torsades. And what she says, she's like, that's actually torsades et point. Like she says the proper French pronunciation, which is a very specific little quirk in medicine. When you say these eponymous names, you pronounce them by their like origin language. The people don't usually do that. It's almost kind of like a flex. But that French word torsade des points means like twisting of the points, which is what that patient had. But we would just say torsades. But like she went this extra little.
I love that she did that on her first day.
Just
like,
she was
let
like,
him know.
It's torsades des points. Like a little something. Just like medical protocols being followed, new little medical details. Like they give the entire medical audience a little bit kind of. They add a little something for the medical audience to stay glued to it, which I think is super cool.
We had the privilege to talk to the man himself. And let me get all this down. Excuse me. Sorry. Actor, writer, executive producer, director, and Emmy Award winner.
An advocate. Amazing.
Noah Wyle.
I was like, oh my gosh, we get to meet the legend himself. What an honor.
It was amazing.
Great to be here with you, Noah.
Pleasure.
So, Dr. Robby walks into season 2. I should say he motorcycles in. We'll get back to that later.
Okay.
But and off the bat, you're introduced to Dr. Al-Hashimi. The audience is introduced to her not only as your equal, as another ER attending, but someone who's going to be potentially stepping in your former role during your sabbatical. Within the first few minutes, there's already some hot phrases dropped, like she's torturing the interns. She is the one, the QI doctor, the one who's the informatics. You hear that phrase. I believe I'm quoting this correctly, great balls of disrespect. And I just wanted to ask you.
Giant balls of
Giant
disrespect.
balls of disrespect. Thank you for the
It's okay.
clarification.
These are medical terms.
It's medical jargon. So I wanted to ask you about how Dr. Robby and Dr. Al-Hashimi approach ER differently, and where is the friction?
Well, I think it's slightly generational in a way, even though we're not that far apart in age. Totally different schools of medicine. I think Robby came up through people that put a lot of emphasis on diagnostics, hands-on, real sort of palliative care and hands-on diagnostic acumen. And Al-Hashimi is really excited by the breakthroughs in technology and not just what they could do in terms of diagnosing disease earlier, but how they can improve the interaction between physicians and patients when you're taking a history. Just the ability to record and have something immediately download into a chart and allowing you to keep eye contact with the patient, to sit bedside, to not feel like you have to only type things into a screen and not have that personal connection. And then the efficiency of being able to pull up that chart, see that it's in the proper format, and just have to go through it for factual and spelling mistakes, frees up a lot of time in a physician's day that's oftentimes spent after shift doing all that catch-up work. So it's an incredibly interesting tool. Robby's counter argument to efficiency is that they give you more work when you are given more time. You'll be asked to see more patients, given that you now no longer will have to spend that time charting, that there's always a blowback to these advancements, and God forbid the power goes out. It's his kind of thinking, which is legit, as this technology is, while impressive, still not 100% foolproof. But it allowed us to create not an antagonistic character to Robby, but one that approaches medicine from a different perspective, having had a different journey. And as he thinks about imparting his ED to another attending when he goes on his sabbatical, he feels very parental about this place, very proprietary. He wants to make sure it's going to be in good hands that he leaves it with.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel like Dr. Robby feels about being so observed? And especially the first episode when Dr. Al-Hashimi is really kind of looking over his shoulder, not second guessing him, but just asking for him to explain maybe what he's doing or why.
I don't think he's used to it. I don't think, he's been kind of a lone wolf attending for a long time and sort of the head of the place. So he's not used to being second guessed or questioned. He's also at a point in his life where he doesn't really want to be examined or looked at too closely. This is his last shift. It's a little bit like getting out under the wire for him before things that he doesn't want to show begin to show. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah,
Okay.
Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about how your work as an actor on the show informs your work behind the camera, as a writer, as a director?
How my work on the show informs my work behind the show. I think it's
Or vice versa.
the other way around. Yeah, no, it starts in the writing room. It starts at the beginning of the season, sitting there with the other writers and taking interviews with people from different aspects of the healthcare system and saying, what should be on TV, what isn't on TV, what would be helpful for you to have put on TV, what would be counterproductive to the work you do to have on TV. What's happening out there, what could happen in 6 months if this doesn't happen, what could happen in 12 months, which population is going to be the most vulnerable if this happens, who's most at risk. And then you get all that data and you start to begin to draw storylines through it. How do we talk about the loss of health insurance to somebody in the face of Medicaid cuts? Well, how can we put that into flesh and blood and have it be relatable to a viewer who might be able to identify the experience either from somebody that they know or from their own family? What resources might be made available to them? This becomes dramatic and educational and sort of engaging in a way that makes it topical, but also entertaining, hopefully, and puts these issues that are kind of dry on the page into flesh and blood where you can actually sort of see consequence.
I think a topic that's very relatable that Noah, the executive producer and writer, brings to Dr. Robby is the intensity. A doctor facing this awful day in the ER. And, it's realistic. You're in this intensity in the ER, but then also you have your own personal trauma. Dr. Robby has these flashbacks. Do you feel that stress on set? Is it hard to separate when you're out there?
Do I feel that stress on set? You know, it's a different set of stresses when you're trying to accomplish the execution of production and the photography of a moment. You know, there's a lot of variables that go into that, and one of those variables is your own performance. And so, like a real doctor, you have to do a lot of compartmentalizing in what you're concentrating on in any given moment. I find that set space to be, you know, my real happy place. That I get there every day and I just can't wait to put on my costume and hit the floor and immerse myself in that reality and tell that much more of the story with these incredible artists. And, you know, this show has been an answered prayer and a dream come true for me, and an opportunity for me to stretch myself as an artist and as a writer and as a director. And I'm gratified every day by being part of it. And the blowback, the feedback, the resonance that the show's having globally is been extremely gratifying.
In those moments of, like, you know, higher stress, higher intensity, how do you disengage, or when does Noah come out and Dr. Robby go away?
Well, you know, we're right in the middle of it now. We're shooting episode 13, and it's hard to come out. It's certainly hard to come out and talk about the work objectively when you're really quite in the middle of it, trying to land this massive 747 emotionally. And so it's sometimes easier to stay in it when you get into the latter episodes, because then the aggregate fatigue of the whole shift that you're supposed to be bringing in before we start at 6:30 in the morning, we have to already be playing as if we've been there for 12 or 13 hours already. So it requires more and more focus the deeper into the season we get. But this is the stuff that I find most exciting about what I do, is getting to play with this kind of intensity, fatigue, specificity, nuance. That's like, this is as good as it gets.
Opening scene, like the very first thing we see, is Dr. Robby, motorcycle.
Yeah.
There's no way in my mind that Dr. Robby was not going to be wearing a helmet. And I was like, oh my gosh, it really is Dr. Robby. That has got to be some type of very well thought out character placement moment. Can you tell us a little bit about what went into that idea, being like, actually, I'm going to tell the audience that I'm on a motorcycle. This is how I live.
Well, what has Robbie been doing for the last 10 months? What kind of therapy has he sought out? To what ability has he been able to synthesize his experiences? He's telling everybody that they should make full use of all the mental health resources available. He hasn't made much use of them himself, but he has been restoring this old motorcycle with an aim of taking a 3-month sabbatical and riding it off on a kind of utopian journey. And then as the shift goes on, we begin to question his motivations for taking this trip and what this trip really is representing for him. And early on, obviously in the writing stages, we planned on me riding to work on this motorcycle that I've been restoring. And it was always intentioned that I would be wearing a helmet, as any doctor would. And then we got to shooting it in Pittsburgh, and I had dinner with John Wells the night before we shot the scene, and he was directing it. And I said, you know, I don't know that he wears that helmet. I think he puts it on the back of his backpack and tells everybody he wears it. But if we see him without it, and he tells people he wears it, we won't know what's true and what isn't. And it will be an interesting experiment for the audience to gauge his level of sincerity going forward. And the example that I used, which is sort of a famous one, is that Gene Wilder supposedly said he would not be participating in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. He wouldn't play Willy Wonka unless his character could come out the front door of the Chocolate Factory as his introduction with a limp and a cane, and then at a certain point fall forward and come up in a somersault and then take a bow. And the director was like, why? And he said, because they won't know where I'm coming from after that. They won't know whether they can believe me or not. They'll be absolutely on unsure footing from the second the character introduces himself. And I thought, well, that's so smart, you know, that the audience is privy to a clue that the characters around the character protagonist aren't aware of. They're ahead of the storytelling just by witnessing that.
Dang, that was deep.
That was great. Thank you.
Wow. Like, knows the real deal.
Yeah, that was a great interview. And I mean, you really had him with the helmet question. That was so good.
I had no idea that it was that thought out. Like they had such a conversation about what that meant.
Yeah.
The ride, no pun intended, it was going to take the audience on. I thought he was just going to be like, oh, I'm badass.
Yeah, I mean, something that I think about a lot with Dr. Robby is that if you have both hands extended to care for everyone else, who is caring for you and how can you, give from an empty cup?
Oh, dang, that was like deep. We like go to a commercial break so I can like sit with that for a second.
Alok, I need to go outside the pit for a minute.
Get some fresh air.
Now, I'm so happy to have you as a doctor in my life, but we also have Dr. Joe Sachs, who is a writer and executive producer on The Pit, with us to talk about the bigger themes.
And he's an ER doctor, the real deal. He knows what's up. Okay, before we even start, I just have to say, Dr. Joe Sachs, it is a huge honor to be able to talk to you. Emergency medicine, physician, television writer, producer, executive producer, Emmy winner. Like basically, sir, I want to be you when I grow up. I'm just saying.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. And I'm just Joe.
Well, thank you so much for being here. This is going to be such an honor. I want to start with asking, The Pit gets so much attention for its medical accuracy, as Dr. Alok Patel can attest himself. But you wrote one of the most intense episodes of season 1, the aftermath of the Pitt Fest shooting. What kind of research do you do when you're working on an episode? And how do you kind of juggle the emotional parts of the show with also like the medical parts of the show?
Wow. Well, the first answer is that we never start with the medicine. We always start with the dramatic needs of the character. And then we find the medicine that fits. And what is the medicine that fits? The medicine that fits comes from our well of ideas. And this well is stocked by physician writers who have over 100 years of experience in emergency medicine and trauma, briefings with experts on every topic that we are going to cover, focus groups with real nurses and real doctors from residency training programs and trauma centers in LA. So we just collect masses and masses of stories, and they're all just waiting for the right time to really, really illustrate what's going on dramatically. I'll give a quick example from season 1, if you'd like, because it's so important. And I'm going to focus on the character Javadi, the medical student. So I'm going to do 3 beats of Javadi's arc. The first one is the writer's room looking to me and saying, what would make a medical student faint on the first day of her rotation? And we've seen thoracotomies, we've seen chest tubes, we've seen all this, but there was a case from my experience that really, really grabbed people. And that was the degloving fracture dislocation of the foot. And to have to put that foot back in season 1, episode 1, was what made medical student Javadi go down. So then we're going to fast forward a little bit, and nobody knows that Javadi's mother is a surgeon. And she's trying to keep that on the DL because she doesn't want to broadcast that to the world. So the question for this episode is, how could Javadi's mother embarrass her in front of everyone? So Joe, how are we going to do that? So what I did was I had the mom, who's a surgeon, come down to consult on an appendectomy patient. And she gets the med students and the intern in the room and says, who can tell me about the CODA study? It was a study in the New England Journal of Medicine where antibiotics alone, rather than surgery, was effective in quite a few of the patients, showing that you didn't always need surgery for appendectomy. So she says, who can tell me? And her daughter kind of freezes, and a different medical student answers the question. And she says, come on, honey, we talked about that at the dinner table. And she's mortified. And Whitaker, I think, looks at her and goes, honey? So she's revealed, she's unmasked as being someone who perhaps has some nepotism going on in there. In an episode that I wrote, 108, which was, how can Javadi one-up her mother? How can Javadi have a victory over her mother? And the case that I picked was, again, a case that I had, which is a black widow spider bite that can give you a rigid abdomen that can make it seem as though you have a life-threatening infection, peritonitis. And very often people with black widow spider bites had such intense pain and a rigid abdomen that they've gone to the operating room for an appendectomy when in fact they need muscle relaxants for the black widow spider bite. So Giavatti one-ups her mother by discovering the black widow spider in the clog. So these are the kinds of things. And again, the stories that we're picking are real. They're kind of obscure and they're kind of interesting, things that people haven't seen before. But again, they serve the dramatic purpose. And if you want to talk about episode 201, the season premiere, I can just go down a few of the cases and explain what the dramatic needs of the scene are and why we picked that particular case.
Yeah, that sounds great. Please.
Yeah, so you know, the biggest case, the big trauma case is what's called a clamshell thoracotomy, where not only do you open one side of the chest, but you open the other and then you cut across the breastbone, and it's called popping the hood. The whole chest opens up. And this particular John Doe was stabbed by a kitchen knife at a restaurant. And the whole purpose of that scene was to show the difference in the conflict between Robby and Al-Hashimi, the new attending. So she's new, she doesn't know how things work. Robby is dialed in, and here's an interloper coming into his space who has different ideas about how to do things. So that conflict plays through the whole scene, as does Samira's phone consistently beeping with texts from her mother because her mother is packing up the house and trying to get rid of all of her stuff from her childhood, much to her dismay. So especially while she's opening a chest and doing this, her phone is going off consistently, which kind of sets that story in motion for her. So there's always something else going on in the scene. We can talk about Louis, who's the alcoholic frequent flyer. Louis, every ER has frequent flyers. And, you know, it's Langdon, that's there for Langdon. Langdon's first day back. And who does he see but Louis, who he stole some Librium from because of his benzodiazepine addiction, and has to make amends to Louis for doing what he did. So that kind of sets that in motion, that Louis is back, just with a toothache. But by the way, he's got a giant belly from ascites, from alcoholism, cirrhosis, and gets handed off to Whitaker, and that'll become an important story for Whitaker. And then I'm going to end with Ethan Bostwick, who's the old man who comes in from a nursing home who has a cardiac arrest. He has a pulse, a physician order for life-saving treatment, which some people would call a DNR, do not resuscitate. I prefer the term A&D, allow natural death, because that's what Mother Nature is intending with somebody. And Whitaker is now teaching two new medical students, you know, Ogilvy and Joy. And everything that he learned last year shines with the patient. The way he's respecting the patient, the way he's explaining to them about treating them with respect, about taking a moment of silence and asking them to turn their phones off. Because last year, in the moment of silence, is when his phone went off with some very funky music playing that was inappropriate for the time. And I think Robby passes by and just looks into the room and sees Whitaker imparting the same wisdom that Robby imparted to him the year before. So all these stories, you know, there's 21 patients in episode 201. You know, the old medical shows used to have 1 or 2 patients. We're going to be 21 patients. And what's wonderful and what's exciting about the Pitt is you never know. Are you going to spend 1 minute with this patient, or is this patient going to blossom into a patient that you're going to see for 5 or 10 or 15 episodes? Because it's all in one day, and patients often stay there for that long. So that's kind of the thrill of the Pitt. And if people go back after 10 or 12 episodes and look in that waiting room from episode 201, they're going to go, oh, wow, that person who finally made it back in episode 5, they were there. They were just sitting there because they were waiting. So that's part of the fun of the episode, that there are some Easter eggs in the waiting room.
Oh,
That's
so
so
many
cool.
Easter eggs. I love that term. Joe, I'm glad that you brought up the dramatic inclusion of patients and how we go on a journey. We don't know how long it's going to be. And sometimes when people watch these cases unfold in the pit, it changes their own behavior. It raises awareness. I bet a lot of people are shaking their shoes now to make sure there's no black widows in there, something that we used to do growing up in Arizona. But, I saw an interview with you a few months ago, and you were specifically talking about the teenager in season 1 who had the overdose, and then he stuck around for many episodes. And so I wanted to ask you, from your perspective as an emergency medicine doctor, someone who sees the pit as a way to bring PSAs to life and enact some change through television, how do you personally choose, healthcare issues to get in the show?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I have to go back to saying that the medicine never comes first. The dramatic needs of the character come first. But by being current and accurate with our medicine as a side effect, people learn. Not only the public, but also professional audiences learn. I can give you an example of each. We had someone from Hawaii post online that they made the diagnosis of the first pediatric case of measles in Hawaii based on what they saw on the pit. We had another social media post by somebody who recognized methemoglobinemia because of the blue patient in episode 14 and 15. And in terms of the public, more interest in organ donation, more interest in advanced directives. And the one example that I'll probably get emotional at was a social media post by a doctor who was working at 2 a.m., very busy night shift, and a 90-something-year-old woman came in with a massive heart attack, not doing well, going downhill in terms of her vital signs. And the doctor knew that the patient didn't have an advanced directive and was like, oh boy. And, when you're a single coverage and taking care of 15 other patients at once, that's a huge burden. So this doctor walks into the room and says, we really need to talk about the plan for your mom. And the family interrupted and said, doctor, we've been watching the pit and we've seen the futility of aggressive treatment in a patient like my mom. And we've seen how it just causes suffering. And so we had a discussion and we decided that if that ever came to be, that we would want comfort measures only. So within a minute, this family from watching the pit had this remarkable and very important decision made because they had seen that. So that was a wonderful moment to read that.
That's incredible. It's beyond television now. It's enacting change. It's raising awareness.
I want to ask for you, what is the most rewarding part of making a show like this and having this impact on people's lives?
Well, I think that's it. We try to be great storytellers. We try to have great dramatic storylines, interesting characters who go through a journey. In season 1, everyone was a blank canvas. And you got to learn who these people are. And that was wonderful. But now, to keep people engaged, new things have to happen. Certainly, Langdon is back from 10 months of rehab, and that is his journey. And his conflict with Robby, which is just starting to be touched upon. Robby wants him at triage. Robby doesn't trust him to be back in the big ER dealing with the most complex patients. But for me, the most rewarding part is telling great stories. And then, like I said, the side effect, because we're so current and so accurate, that people are learning. People are learning and professionals are learning. And some individuals may be inspired to pursue a career in healthcare. And that's kind of how this whole show started. Noah Wyle received tons of messages during COVID from people saying, we are hurting, and we need someone to inspire us. And in doing this show, we've had many, many, many messages from people. We had one from a parent of a 14-year-old who binge watched the show and said, I'm going into a career in emergency medicine now. This is what I want to do.
Victory.
Wow.
Wait, that's awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This was such a lovely time.
Joe, it was an honor. Thank you. I wish we had 3 more hours to talk.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's do some real talk. Let's take a dilemma that happens on the show, and I want your quick and dirty what you would have done in that scenario. To get the patient's heart beating again, would you have gone with Dr. Al-Hashmi or Dr. Robby?
Like, if that was the scenario and we were on a deserted island or something, I would be like, which one of you has done this before? But if not, I'm calling a cardiothoracic surgeon. I'm calling a trauma surgeon. I'm calling people, because you usually are not opening up chests and doing this in the ER without like the surgical cavalry in there.
Okay.
This procedure, the Hilar twist, which I've seen in literature called the Hilum flip, Hilum twist, Hilar flip. One of my friends who's a trauma surgeon calls it a Hilar twist. Regardless, this thing's pretty hardcore. You need to have someone in there who's done this before. Maybe not a bunch of interns and residents and like one surgeon.
I have to say I prefer Hilar twist. It sounds like a dance.
Do the twist, the Hilar twist. And that's it for today's episode of the Pitt Podcast. You can catch us right here every Thursday after each episode drops. Watch us on HBO Max or listen wherever you get your podcasts.
The Pitt Podcast is a production of HBO Max in collaboration with PRX. The executive producer of PRX is Jocelyn Gonzalez. Our managing producer is Courtney Florentine. Our editor is Lucy Perkins, and our video producer and editor is Anthony Q. Artis, with assistant editor Damon Durrell Hinson. The show is engineered by Tommy Bazarian. Our production managers are Edwin Ochoa and Tony Carlson.
The executive producer of HBO Podcasts is Michael Gluckstad. The senior producer is Allison Cohen Sorokach, and the associate producer is Aaron Kelly. I'm Alok Patel.
And I'm Hunter Harris. We'll see you next week in the Pit.